WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I'm Tia Graham, and we are joined by Robin Vincent of Chalk Beat Detroit. Robin, thank you so much for joining us this week, guest hosting with us on the Metro.
Hey, Tia. It has been so good to be part of the team this week. I love everyone at WDET. So much energy around here and positivity. We've been having a little too much fun.
I know.
Today on the program, breakdancing is a popular art form in Detroit. We'll talk about the history of that and how it's influenced the city with journalist Kahn Santori Davison.
Plus, how do people age gracefully? A Thursday event in Detroit will explore these questions and more. We'll speak with an expert on aging about it later this hour.
Across the country, many school board races have become a political battleground. A space where board members decide to ban books or prevent a more comprehensive education of American history. Now, Detroit school board races don't have all that drama, but that doesn't mean they're not going to be interesting. That's because there's a huge list of candidates running this November, more than 20 to be exact, and they're all vying for 3 open seats that will shape the future of Michigan's largest school district. Morrow, tomorrow, like tomorrow. We talked about this. You are a political analyst here in Detroit. You've also spent a long time in Detroit schools as an educator, an administrator, an assistant superintendent. And now we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on with this race. Mario, welcome to the Metro.
Thanks for having me.
So first off, okay, more than 20 candidates for 3 seats on the Detroit School Board. Why do you think we're seeing so many folks vying for 3 open seats?
Well, it's interesting because that is a large number for 3 seats. Either they are very dedicated to education, they want to see the district move in the right direction, or maybe they're using this as a stepping stone for another political career, or just maybe they just want to get paid. It is a paying position now. And you get a stipend. I think it's $250 a meeting, which is about $75,000 a year. It's not a bad gig to have.
We do hear that a lot at Detroit school board meetings. Some of the folks who will speak during public comment, they will be a little bit disparaging of school board members, let's say when they're late, for example, and they'll say things like, "You're getting paid. Where are you at?" Let's get some important clarity here. What are some of the key responsibilities of a school board member?
Well, the 2 main responsibilities is, number 1, hiring and firing of the superintendent, and number 2, creating and making sure that policy is followed within the district. Now, there are other responsibilities like setting the calendar, approving the calendar rather, and also working with the board, working with the administrators as it relates to safety, process, and procedure. Approving contracts and things like that. But the 2 major, most responsible things for the school board is hiring and firing of the superintendent and the policy, creating policy and making sure the policy is followed.
Okay, I'm glad that we have the focus now on the superintendent, who is Nikolai Vitti. Some of the priorities that he has really made central to his tenure are improving student achievement and the school culture and climate and increasing teacher pay. But with new members, those priorities could really change, right? What are the things that you see newly elected board members might advocate for if they get on the board?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because you could very well be a superintendent and have a 7-0 vote in your favor. In other words, the school board members are really in tune to what you're doing. They like what you're doing. But when there's change and when there's turnover and you have 3 new members coming on, it could very well turn to a 4-3 vote, which could go either way if someone was on the fence. So Dr. Vitti has to have a great deal of faith in the board and have a working relationship with the board because his priorities and his agenda could very well be in reverse. Achievement, absenteeism, just the way he does business in and out the community could be a major problem if he does not make a good connection with these new board members.
So it's like, when you have a president who has a divided Congress, right?
Absolutely.
And you can't get anything done.
Absolutely.
I'll learn back at Obama and some of his time.
Dr. Vitti just signed a new contract, I think, within the last year or so.
Yep.
And so he's intact, but they can fire. They can fire for cause. They can fire just because and cut a deal, and Mr. Vitti will be on his way if he does not have that board support. So it is, again, incumbent upon the administration and the board to work together. For instance, attendance in the Detroit Public School DPSCD is not very good at all. Absenteeism is atrocious. In addition to that, yes, academic levels have increased, but Detroit Public School Community District is still one of the worst performing academic districts in the entire nation. So there's a lot to be answered for, and I'm sure these new school board members are going to be holding the superintendent's feet to the fire.
We're speaking with Morrow, a political analyst and former Detroit Public Schools educator and administrator, about Detroit's upcoming school board election. Now, Morrow, in an ideal world, what kinds of qualifications and experience do you think a school board member should have?
Well, that's a very interesting question, because I've known school board members, even when I was a superintendent in Albion, Michigan, school board members who did not have the highest degrees of education, but were parents and involved in the community and very dedicated to the cause of education and children. So it doesn't have to be an educational experience, but it has to be an education. It has to be an experience of knowledge and dedication and being able to work with not only the administration, but work with parents and work with community outlets like the nonprofits and so on and so on. So a knowledge base and having a commitment and dedication to education, I would say, are the three most important components of being a school board member.
I will say that every time I'm covering a school board meeting, I do see a lot of the members displaying that sort of knowledge and commitment to education. A lot of them have PhDs in educational leadership and other degrees that are focused on education. But what I also see sometimes is some folks who are good speakers, and I wonder, are you perhaps seeing this as a launching point for like a bigger political arena, such as going to the State House? And so I wonder if you have seen that, folks like using the school board as their opening to realize bigger political ambitions.
Absolutely. There are school board members who have gone on to run for city council, run on to for State House. Some have even tried to run on a larger level, on a national level. But it's still about that dedication. And people aren't going to vote for you later on if you have not done the job at the lowest level of our political spectrum, which could be a school board member, but one of the most powerful and important positions to have.
From your experience working in Detroit schools, Morrow, for a long time, what do you wish more people understood about the school board and its functions?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that, because with, let's say, 40,000 students in DPSCD, you have a very low turnout at school board meetings. There's a certain sector of our society, those parents and involved community members, who show up, who actually have the force and actually have the knowledge base to get things done.
The vocal minority.
The vocal minority. And I'm going to tell you something. There are some people like Miss Helen Moore, who has been
Mother
active
Moore.
for years.
Let us snap to Mother Moore right now.
Yes. And you talk about somebody who's knowledgeable, who could easily be a school board member.
That's right.
But is an advocate for cause and moving the needle in a positive direction, and could actually be the school board member's worst nightmare.
And we should just pause to acknowledge, Mother Moore is in her 90s and is a longtime social justice activist in Detroit. And every chance she gets, she is at school board meetings saying, how do we get free? We get free with education.
Right.
And that's why I'm holding all of your feet to the fire.
How do we improve academics? How do we improve this absenteeism? How do we get meals 3 times a day in schools? She has been an advocate for public schools for a long time, especially Detroit public schools. And I wish school board members, these 20-plus candidates, would take a page or a chapter out of her book to make sure that they do the right thing if they're elected.
When we think about the makeup of school board members, do you find that they're disproportionately, let's say, more well-off people, more affluent folks who are doing this?
I would say the majority, yes, 75%. But there's another sector, that 25%, that just don't have the financial means that others have. However, they have the dedication, they have the commitment, and they have the know-how and the knowledge base to get things done.
How do we make the process fairer then?
Well, I tell you, the public, those voters, have to educate themselves on who these 20-plus people are. You have people with the same names running in the race. You have husband and wives running. You have people who've been on the school board before. You have former educators who have been dismissed. They have to do their research and find out who these people are, and just don't vote on name recognition, which we have a problem with in our community.
I will say that in the Chalkbeat Detroit newsroom, we are going to be doing some deep dives into all the candidates for folks and getting everyone the information about who exactly everybody is, because who's got time for that other than the journalists?
Absolutely. There used to be a publication called Civic Searchlight that did deep dives and this was years ago, I'm dating myself. It did deep dives on every political person who was running for office. And they talked about criminal records, personal records and what they've done, their business records, and so forth and so on. If you cannot manage your personal finances, how are you going to oversee the budget and the finance for a public school district with 40+ thousand students?
Mario Morrow is a political analyst and former Detroit Public Schools educator and administrator. Mario, thank you so much for joining the Metro.
Thank you very much, and good luck with your new career, right?
The Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. Heard a great conversation from Robin Vincent and Mario Morrow. Coming up on the Metro, a lot has been happening in our politics recently. We'll talk about how Michigan voters and Republican voters specifically are digesting this unique moment. You all stay right there on the Metro.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at the University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new Master of Science degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. Admission is open to qualified applicants with a bachelor's degree in any field. Course selection is flexible, with no prerequisites, 4 required courses, and 6 electives. Learn more at business.udmercy.edu.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I am Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent.
And we are once again here with the Metro. Just taking a quick look at the weather. Mostly sunny skies early on. A high of 91 degrees. Expect thunderstorms to develop this afternoon. Thursday, partly cloudy. A chance of rain and storms. A high of 88. And Friday, expect more thunderstorms with a high of 81. Strong winds and small hail, possibly.
Watch out.
Watch out. But the last few weeks have been a wild time in politics. There was an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. President Biden dropped out of the race, and Vice President Kamala Harris was tapped to take his place. And that's changed everything. In a very short period, this election went from being practically called for Trump to being a lot more competitive. But how are Michigan voters responding to this news, and what are the demands from Republican voters in this state? Here to discuss this now is Dennis Darnoy. He is a Republican strategist and owner of Denzar Consulting in Farmington Hills. Dennis, welcome back to the Metro.
Thank you. Happy Wednesday, and thanks for having me in studio. I appreciate it.
Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Yeah. So in the last few weeks, like we just said, there was an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, and President Biden dropped out of the race and picked Kamala Harris to replace him. A lot has been happening within the last 13 days. So how are Michigan voters responding to all of this news right now?
Yeah, well, it's been a reset here in Michigan as well as nationally. But as we know, Michigan is going to be one of the 5 states that very likely picks the next president. And so what it's done is it's actually energized a lot of voters who previously thought the race was going to be between Trump and Biden and weren't too terribly excited about that, which, to be perfectly honest, was playing in the favor of Republicans and Donald Trump. And that's why you saw a lot of the polls show that Trump was doing very well here in Michigan. And honestly, right before President Biden dropped out, one of the things that his pollsters showed him was that he was down in Michigan. And if he couldn't win Michigan, there really wasn't a viable pathway to the presidency. Mm-hmm. So that poll showing him down in Michigan was a leading factor in him deciding to drop out. So now that he's done that, now that Vice President Harris is going to be the nominee, it's shaken it up, and Michigan is back in play for either candidate to take.
So many things happen in such a short amount of time. So what are the biggest concerns facing Michigan voters as you understand it from what you're picking up? Yeah,
so I mean, it's economics is one of the biggest issues because recently, I think maybe about 2 weeks ago, there was a survey showing that Michigan residents were the most financially distressed, Texas coming in second. So that, we still have not rebounded from the pandemic in terms of our economic power. A lot of our residents are in debt. A lot of our residents are having a lot of economic struggles and don't have that economic independence that they had before. So that's going to be a number one issue. And of course, that then talks about inflation and some of the economic decisions that the Biden administration made. So that's going to be an area that you're going to see Republicans talk about quite a bit. On the flip side, now that you have Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket, abortion is still a very salient issue, and it's one that motivates voters here. It's one that plays very well to the Democratic base, as well as independent voters. And Michigan's a purple state, so those independent voters are going to be the ones that ultimately decide who becomes president. And so the fact that you have a Trump, if you will, a Trump-appointed Supreme Court, overruling decades and decades of precedent. You have a state here in Michigan that overwhelmingly supported putting abortion rights into our Constitution. That's an unavoidable issue that's going to be discussed in this upcoming election cycle.
Indeed. And there are many Trump supporters in the state of Michigan, but there are a lot of Republicans who may be a little bit more moderate. They live in places around Southeast Michigan, including Troy, downriver, parts of Macomb County. So what are the primary concerns of these voters right now?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting demographic because with the picking of J.D. Vance as the vice presidential candidate, that really is not appealing to those voters because a lot of them are not isolationist when it comes to foreign policy. They'd like to see a greater American presence internationally, and the pick of J.D. Vance certainly goes against that. Again, if the Republican ticket focuses on issues that aren't really economically driven, those voters are going to have to face a choice. Do they, vote for Trump reluctantly? Do they not vote? Do they vote for Robert Kennedy Jr.? And I think there is a question as to what is the viability of Robert Kennedy Jr. here in Michigan. What we saw in 2016 was 5% of voters went for third-party candidates, either the Libertarian or the Green Party, and
Wow.
that helped drive Trump to victory. What you saw in 2020 was only 1% of Michigan voters voting for a third-party candidate. So that third-party candidates in Michigan can swing an election, one way or the other.
5%. I'm wondering if that's like
Significant.
an anomalous number of voters to go for that third party.
It is, because generally what you see in Michigan elections is 1 to 3% maximum going for all the third party candidates. But in 2016, you had a strong libertarian running. You had Jill Stein on the Green ticket.
Yep.
And so those candidates were able to attract a significant amount of votes. And as we know, Donald Trump, marginally won here in Michigan in 2016. When that wasn't a factor in 2020, Joe Biden was able to win the state. So right now we don't know how that's going to play out in the polls, and that's obviously something we're going to see. If I'm a Trump supporter, I am a little bit worried that it will affect more on the Republican side, because when Robert Kennedy Jr. was in, his main reason for running was, I'm not Joe Biden. I'm younger. I'm a little bit more progressive. Now with Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket, what is his justification for running? And if you're a Republican, you might actually want to see him no longer run and make it a Harris-Trump race instead of having that third-party alternative.
Dennis Darnoy is a Republican strategist and owner of Denzar Consulting in Farmington Hills. We're discussing what Republicans in the state are making of the presidential election right now. And J.D. Vance, you just spoke of J.D. Vance, is Trump's vice presidential pick. I want to play a clip that has gone viral recently of Vance speaking with Tucker Carlson in 2021 on Fox News.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies who are miserable at their own lives and the choices that they've made. And so they want to make the rest of the country miserable, too. And it's just a basic fact. You look at Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, AOC, the entire future of the Democrats is controlled by people without children.
As a childless woman with soon to have a cat,
Ouch.
I know.
Not enjoying that one.
Kamala Harris's stepchildren, Pete Buttigieg, has since adopted a child, but Vance is becoming known for making these type of remarks for his criticism, and angry rhetoric. I'm curious what you make of this decision by Trump to choose Vance, and how are voters broadly reacting to this selection? What are you seeing? I mean, I'm seeing kind of mixed things, but I'm mostly seeing people not really too excited.
Well, it was a legacy pick, and it was a pick that I would say was born out of the confidence of what they were seeing at the polls at the time. They figured that J.D. Vance, a senator from Ohio, in a vice presidential debate against what they would say is a progressive liberal from California, they liked that matchup. The problem is Joe Biden dropped out of the race. And so now that resets it, and there's now more attention on J.D. Vance. And with the J.D. Vance pick, that was purely to play to the base and to energize those voters and to say, hey, look, we have a young Republican, we have a young MAGA conservative as the vice presidential pick. What we're going to propose to you is going to go on for decades because this guy is young. And so at the time, that was seen as the smart pick. Now, obviously, the race has been reset. There is much more focus on J.D. Vance, his comments across a whole number of issues. But a comment that you just played, that is not going to go well with swing voters. That is not going to go well with independent voters. That is not going to bring suburban female voters back into the Republican tent. The voters that you need to win. So I do think that, technically, Trump, if he wanted to replace him, has about 4 or 5 days that he could remove Vance on the ticket, but then Ohio's going to kick in about 4 days, and you can't do that. And obviously, I have yet to see a moment in 8 years and previous that Donald Trump ever admitted to making mistakes. So removing J.D. Vance would have to be an admission of a mistake, and I don't see that happening. So it's going to be a Trump-Vance ticket going forward. And, I think you're going to see throughout the election continued comments like that coming out, because what plays for clicks in a Republican environment does not play in a general election. And so you can sit there and you can make these comments on Tucker Carlson or any of those that play to that Republican base, and it sounds great and you're loved for all of that. And then you have to run an election across 50 states where not everyone shares your point of view. And so, you're going to hear that in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia, the states that are going to decide the election. And it's probably not going to play very well for the team.
And before we let you go, the head of the Teamsters Union, Sean O'Brien, spoke at the Republican National Convention a few weeks ago. And I want to play this clip from that event.
Corporatists hate when working people join together to form unions. But for a century, major employers have waged a war against labor by forming corporate unions of their own. We need to call the Chamber of Commerce and the business roundtables what they are. They are unions for big business. And here's another fact. Against gigantic multinational corporation, an individual worker has zero power. It's only when Americans band together in democratic unions that we win real improvements on wages, benefits, and working conditions. Companies like Amazon are bigger than most national economies. Amazon is valued over $2 trillion. That makes it the 14th largest economy in the world. What is sickening is that Amazon has abandoned any national allegiance. Amazon's sole focus is on lining its own pockets. Remember, elites have no party, elites have no nation.
So there has been a growing interest within the Republican Party to support unions and using government to support workers and families. So have you found that to be true also for Michigan Republicans? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, I think so. And it goes back to the economic issues that we talked about previously. And where does Trump need to find voters? Where do Republicans need to find voters in a statewide race in order to be successful? And, it's going to be back in Saginaw County. It's going to be in Macomb County. It's going to be in the downriver areas where, the issues that were being talked about there in that clip resonate very, highly with those voters. So again, it's going to be a very tough race. But when you're looking for voters of all stripes in order to win the state, those issues that were just talked about are going to be very, very prevalent. And they're going to be in the communities and the counties that Republicans need to win and win well in order to win statewide.
Well, Dennis, we're going to have you back, of course, because we're going to continue to have these conversations and let our listeners know what's going on for those like me who just want it in bullet points, Just need a bullet points. And you just gave us the bullet points of what we needed to know. So Dennis Darnoy, a Republican strategist and the owner of Denzar Consulting in Farmington Hills. Dennis, thank you so much for joining us. We will have you back soon.
All right. Thank you. Have a great week.
Coming up, how can our parents and grandparents age gracefully? In a minute, we'll talk with the leader of an event in Detroit that's exploring that very issue.
Welcome back to the Metro on 101.9 WDET FM. I am Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Hi, Tia.
Hello, Robin. We're going to have a conversation right now, actually, about aging gracefully, an expo that's happening in Detroit tomorrow. And we were talking just a little bit beforehand, a little bit before the show as well, and just experiencing your parents' age.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to see that, right? For so long, like you're growing up and your parents just loom larger than life as these like perfect people. We've gotten past that point. We found the flaws, right? But now we're facing this new reality of of mortality, and it reminds us of our own mortality.
It really does. And, for most of us, we really just want to see the best for our parents, especially as they begin to age. And, aging is a part of life. And if you're fortunate enough to make it to the golden years, if you're fortunate enough to make it to the golden years, that's a period there.
Yes.
But what's being done to make sure adults have the support they need to enjoy those golden years? The 9th annual Aging Matters Education and Expo is taking place tomorrow at Fellowship Chapel in Detroit, and its goal is to empower aging adults to live their golden years a little brighter. Bernadette Hudgens is the founder and organizer of Aging Matters Education and Expo. She's also the CEO and founder of Golden Connection Senior Services, an organization that provides services to older adults and caregivers in Metro Detroit. Bernadette, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. I do want to clarify, I am not the founder of this event.
Okay.
I am actually taking it over, but our wonderful founder was Pat Rencher. So, and it's being I would say, produced by the Detroit Support Caregiver Support Collaborative. So glad to be a part of that group.
We're going to say the founder's name one more time.
Pat Rancher. She is the editor of the Urban Aging News. So if you don't know Pat, you will get to know Pat. She's awesome.
Exactly. Thank you, Pat. Wherever you are, if you're listening, thank you so much, Pat. But 9 years of Aging Matters. You're going to be taking over the Expo, Education Expo in Detroit. What has it been like for you working with the Expo, working with the group, and trying to just get the message out?
I think the wonderful thing is we have such wonderful partners and sponsors. So a lot of our sponsors are already engaging in activity. Really in this, I would say, event was sprouted out of this whole idea of providing resources for the aging network. So making sure that people who are either aging, and I think you brought up a really good point, you can't call out the fact that if you made it here, you have another option is either get older or not. Yeah. So I think if we're going to get older, we want to do it in a way where we can be independent and do it gracefully and respectfully.
I love that. So what's happening at this year's Expo? It's happening tomorrow from 8 to 3 p.m. at Fellowship Chapel. What can people expect, especially caregivers, family members who are caring for those loved ones?
I would say this is a all-around encompassing event. So we'll have workshops. We have 3 segmented workshops. One is about gadgets and tools to help you remain independent. Also, we have elder legal law. So as you think about, you really need to get yourself in order when it comes to the legal stuff and the financial stuff. And then also just knowing about the community resources that are out there. So many different things, but it sometimes can be a little overwhelming. So coming to this space, we'll break some of those things down. We'll have some panel discussions. We'll have a vendor gallery of over 50 vendors who will be there, who ultimately, all of their roles and responsibilities is to support the senior community. So please call out, though. It's not just for the aging and not just for caregivers. It's for anybody who's thinking about getting older. And I think that's most of us. I think the challenge for some people is they think about it a little late. We need to start planning for aging in our 20s, in our 30s, so that when you get there, you're ready. And you can do it the way you want to.
Yeah, Robin, as soon as you said, because I'm just thinking, a lot of us don't think about it in a way that it's going to happen to me. Yeah, I'm going to get older. Yeah. And, once the knees start hurting.
Yeah.
I start to think to myself, wait a minute, it is happening to me. It is going to happen to me. So, in what ways are you telling the younger folk who may tune up or turn in to the expo about learning about aging? What do you tell young people?
I think the thing to be reminded is that sometimes we feel like I don't need it now. But sometimes the things you don't need now are things you should just start learning about and become more knowledgeable. And the more you learn for yourself, the more you can support your family members. So I know for myself, I've been pushing my dad to go to the doctor. He's 70 and he wasn't going. He had a health scare. And all the things I had been talking to him about, he was ready. So, but a part of that is being, I'd say, prepping the stage. Yeah. Because sometimes people aren't ready, but the more educated you are, you can kind of, pepper in some of those ideas along the way because you are knowledgeable and educated.
I love it. So we actually did have a conversation on the show, Created Equal. Wayne State professor Amanda Leggett spoke on WDET's Created Equal about the difficulty and importance of talking about long-term planning for the elders in our lives. Here's that clip.
We don't always like to get into the what ifs and, what will I do? But truly, the sooner we can start to have these conversations as families, the better, because then our values and our preferences around care decisions, if we're able to clearly express these or make, plans and share these with our family members and friends, then it really helps to take some of the burden then off of adult children, for example, or a spouse or other family member when it comes time for some of this decision making, knowing that you've already had these conversations, listened to kind of these values and preferences, and understand, where that individual is coming from, what they're hoping for. The sooner we can have these conversations, the better chance we have to then really try and make a plan to respect those wishes and desires.
So you just did the beautiful segue of talking about your dad and having these difficult conversations, just even if it's something as simple as go to the doctor.
Go to the doctor.
Or, hey, take that aspirin if you need the aspirin if you're in pain. Just little things like that. And as well, the community conversations and making sure that you're in a space with other individuals who understand what's going on. So why is it so important to have these conversations, not just with your family, but with your friends and your greater extended community?
I honestly think, in my way, it's really a way of showing your love. It's showing your concern that I want you to live your best life. I want you to be fulfilled. I want you to have everything that you need. And the best way I can do that is by sharing knowledge and engaging with you. And so I think that's why it's so important to have these conversations earlier. And when you're not stressed. You think about the decisions you make when you're in an emergency situation. You don't always make the best decisions, or the options aren't as plenty. Right? So when you make these decisions and when you're educated, you can plan and you can be more thoughtful and you can make better decisions versus out of crisis.
Right now, Bernadette Hudgens is on the show. The CEO and founder of Golden Connection Senior Services and the organizer of Aging Matters Education and Expo in Detroit. And, once again, just thinking about fathers and families and aging and having these conversations, aging in place. We see that we have so many more. The baby boomers are thriving. The baby boomers are thriving, and they're here, and they want to stay where they are. They want to age in place. So what are some of the tips that you're giving, especially at the expo tomorrow? There's going to be a panel discussions and workshops about aging in place. So what are some of the things, what does that look like?
I would say, leveraging the resources that we have, even stepping outside of your comfort zone, like depending on if you're comfortable or not comfortable with technology. Technology is going to be the key to helping people to stay at home independently. And that is not something you can run away from. And so, learning that space and engaging with your family. And I will tell you, I think the best tech support you will find in your family is I'd say a 10 to 12-year-old. They're so happy to teach you something and that they know something you don't know. Now you get to the teenagers, they've got other priorities.
They don't have time for that.
Yeah. But the 10 to 12, they're just so happy to show you something. So I say, leveraging that. But I think the thing about tomorrow is we have an array of things. So depending on whatever your area of need, you can jump in where you need. So let's say, for example, you've been focusing on you're 61 and you need to do something with this Social Security thing or you're going to be penalized. You could have someone there who can talk to you about that. So to get you some of the resources, you may not get all of your issues resolved, but you'll meet someone who will help you take things to the next step. So again, our goal isn't to overwhelm, is to provide resources and give you the opportunity to go down this road of aging in a way that you want to.
And before we let you go, just one more time about the expo that's happening tomorrow for those who want to know, who want a little bit more information, or maybe who can't make it but would like to send someone else. Just let us know what we need to know.
Sure. We're going to be over at Fellowship Chapel from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And that will be, and I do want to call out, registration is closed, but we are welcoming walk-ins. We really want people to know that we have space. We will make space. Come on in and join us. And we have some wonderful sponsors. We have Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Foundation, Detroit Area Agency on Aging, Blue Cross Blue Shields, the Hannon Center. Lots of great organizations sponsoring and supporting this wonderful event. So we really are excited about people coming and getting the resources that they need to age respectfully and independently.
Thank you so much to Bernadette Hudgens, the CEO and founder of Golden Connection Senior Services. Hudgens is also the organizer of Aging Matters Education and Expo in Detroit, happening tomorrow at Fellowship Chapel from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. That is tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Wonderful. It's such a pleasure, and I hope to see you all soon.
You will.
Coming up, breakdancing is a popular art form in Detroit. We'll talk about the history of breaking and how it's influenced the city with journalist Kahn Santori Davison.
Welcome back to the Metro on 1019 WDET FM. Robin, we're pop locking right now.
And hopefully a little bit of Detroit Jit.
Yeah, we're doing it all right now. I can't wait to hear this conversation.
Yes, we recently highlighted boxing, the oldest Olympic sport on the Metro. Now we're getting into the culture. We're getting ready to pop and lock into a conversation on the most recent addition to the Olympics. It's kind of hard for me to believe. Breaking. After being an underground cultural touchstone for decades, breakdancing is now out in the open as an official Olympic sport. Now, breakdancing began in the late 60s and early 70s in the Bronx, and as the dance spread nationwide, Detroit and other cities added their own regional flair. They even created new, loosely connected dances. I'm looking at you, the Jit. So to discuss breakdancing and the stamp that Detroit has uniquely placed on it, we're joined by Kahn Santori Davison. He's a Detroit freelance journalist. Kahn, welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me, Tia and Robin. I'm honored.
We are honored. The honor is ours. So, Kahn, people have probably seen some form of breakdancing, but I want to hear your very eloquent words about what exactly breakdancing is.
Break dancing is a form of dance. It kind of encompasses a little bit of everything. And like as you alluded earlier, there's pop, there's locking, there's head spinning, there's fist spinning, there's knee spinning, there's jumping, there's back flips, there's a little bit of tumbling. There is the robotic elements of dance in which you kind of move stiff and twist and turn, and everything is synchronized to the music, which is the most compelling and fascinating part. You're on beat, doing all these different things.
Ooh, and it makes me think about in Detroit, you know, when dancers are dancing to some of the legendary Detroit music, when they're dancing to Detroit electro and Detroit techno and house and ghetto tech, and it's like, whew, it's very powerful to see that.
Yes, if you time you visit the Movement Festival, they always have a little square taped off where I think it's like maybe a piece of flooring or
some linoleum, old school style.
Yep, and people will be there break dancing, jitting, or we're doing whatever the music moves them to do for the entire weekend.
Okay, so it takes some real athletic skill to be spinning on your head, right?
Yeah,
and
indeed.
style and originality, right? Like that's what really stands out is when you incorporate some interesting moves that no other B-boy or B-girl is doing. And we'll get to what that even means, those labels. But could you talk about the social climate that helped lead to the birth of breakdancing culture?
Well, breakdancing was birthed with the other elements of hip hop, and for those old school guys like me who are nearing 50 or on the other side, we still recognize hip hop as being the DJ, the MC, the graffiti artist, and the dancer. There was no just hip hop is built around the MC. No, all the elements created hip hop, and so the birth of breakdancing birthed with all those elements. And remember that hip hop in its essence was born out of lack thereof. Hip hop came about at a time when we had Reaganomics and we had funding being cut to music programs at school and arts programs at school. And so what do you do when you don't have a channel to tune into and do things? You do your own. You take bits and scraps and you make your own. There's no dance class, we'll make our own dance. There's no music class, well, we'll beat on desks to make our own music. So breakdancing came about, and it was 84, and you had movies like Beat Street and Breaking. And people got to remember that breakdancing, that 84 year was big because breakdancing was actually part of the ceremony, the closing ceremony of the Olympics. And so that was like the year that breakdancing like really broke out and kind of, if nothing, even if you've never seen it or nothing about it, you've heard the term.
Right. That's right.
America's familiar enough with it.
I just want to jump in and say break into Electric Boogaloo. My brother and sister literally ran it to the ground. I watched it so many times. I can see them dancing in the colorful outfits right now. It was everywhere. So it was just a cultural, just it was just amazing to see those type of things on a big screen.
I wish there was video of this, of your brother and sister.
Oh, just
breaking it down. Yes.
Yeah.
So this breakdancing was a rejection of popular mainstream culture. It was a rejection of the political oppressive policies at the time. And now, yes, we got this full circle moment here with it being added to the Olympics as a new sport, right? I want to play a clip of Alyssa Roenick, a senior writer at ESPN, speaking to NPR about why new sports are selected for the Olympics.
It used to be that a new sport to get in was a very complicated process. And at the same time, the IOC started to realize that they needed to add some new sports, certainly some youthful sports, some, X Games style sports to attract a new audience. The audiences seem to be slipping every 2 to 4 years.
Okay, so Kahn, what do you make of the addition of new sports like breakdancing to the Olympics? What does that signal to you about how the dance has evolved over time?
Well, it's evolved because the breakdance community is pretty much a very tight community, and you see breakdancing more than you think you do. I guarantee you 50 to 70% of all stadium tours, theater tours that have dancers, there's a form of breakdancing that's implemented in that choreography somewhere, And so you have it to this point, and you got to remember that with the way the Olympics works now, the host city proposes a sport. So it was Paris who put that out there and said, hey, let's do breakdancing. So I say that to say, one, this may be the only time we get it. And two, hey, if the stars line up and Detroit gets an Olympics, you never know.
Hey,
we could propose jitting.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Wow.
I'm still working on that. I'm still getting to classes and going there.
Would that be a moment? Okay, we have invoked the JIT several times here, and we have got to explain this if there happen to be any listeners out there who don't know what the JIT is and how it relates to breakdancing. Can you talk about that evolution?
It extremely relates because the jitting is dancing is a very Detroit thing, and it aligns with what we call ghetto tech.
That's right.
And ghetto tech was kind of like, I guess, like a sibling of techno music.
Right.
And so as techno music rose, and ghetto tech is just more of Detroit hip hop mixed with techno, mixed with Miami bass music and ghetto tech. And so the dancing you get from that. And so if you grew up in the 90s and you remember shows like the New Dance Show or Contempo,
yes,
you saw people jitting. And there has been, actually, as recently as the fireworks, if you watch the live telecast of the fireworks, it had a dance-off, and there were people jitting and also break dancing. There were different groups that competed. So that sums up that.
Beautiful. When was the peak of Detroit's breakdancing scene, would you say?
I would say the peak of it had to be, I would say, 1990, because at some point, jitting took over as the dance of Detroiters. It became something that's what we did. And so when you would go out to a club, whether you be at the Intro Vest or UBQ's, a different place where people dance, you would see people break dance, but you would see way more people jitting. It was something, because it was ours, and it was Detroit, and for here you could just say it was more socially acceptable. It was the thing. So
that was independent journalist Kahn Santori Davison talking to us about the history of breakdancing as it debuts on the Olympic stage and its deep connection to Detroit. Kahn, thank you so much for joining the Metro.
Thank you for having me.
That is the Metro. I want to let you all know the WDET listener survey is back, and we want to hear from you. Last summer, we asked what you love about us and what we can do better. That information helped create new local music shows, just like this one as well, the Metro, and just like the one you're about to hear next, In the Groove. Share your thoughts, and you could win some new WDET swag. It's quick, it's anonymous, and you'll be helping us serve better. Take the survey now at WDET.org, and a huge thank you to those who do.
Yes, please take that survey. It's only going to take a moment. And tomorrow on the show, I'll be speaking with Dearborn Mayor Abdullah Hammoud We're going to talk about Palestinian liberation, and we're also going to learn more about the Belle Isle Art Fair happening this weekend. And Oakland County has a college debt alleviation program. We'll find out more together tomorrow on the Metro.
And that is the Metro for Wednesday, July 31st. You can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform. The show is also on YouTube if you like listening that way.
The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Additional production support from Sydney Walkley. Our engineer is Nate Bender. Music by Sam Bobian and Will Sessions.
This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thanks for listening. We will see you tomorrow.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.